Well, because of the technology, I think it's creating a lot of stress.
Yes, well, that's right. I have a lot of internet problems here. The internet is very bad here. I cannot do any work actually.
I'm sorry, I really wouldn't
Almost.
be tolerant if that were me. I go crazy when I have no internet. You
Well,
know,
I can do Skype talks. That's the weird thing because the internet connection is on and off continuously for the past months here, and I just don't do anything. I have the impression that it's. I mean, it might be just on purpose even. I mean, if I look around here, a
no,
lot of
no.
people are being shut down.
I can tell you something. Something strange happens. Sometimes I get cut off. I don't pay my bill on time, but Skype still works. There's something strange about Skype.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
don't read too much into it. But I have my similar complaints to you. I can't upload to YouTube at the moment. It's very slow, and I think they're doing it on purpose.
Yeah, yeah. I think so too. I mean, some people are really being shut down completely,
Oh yeah.
their channels or websites.
But you know, I think
So,
there'll be a backlash. I think things will return to some normality.
well, I think I mean, this is clearly going automatically with algorithms and all kinds of technologies
Well,
that it's being suppressed, it's being
I've,
sabotaged. I get ridiculous. Also on Google, if I try to look for certain subjects, I don't find anything. I have to go to page 9. Google search engine is really not workable at all. You have to really know what you're looking for and
no,
go
I know.
to specific websites for it.
Absolutely. No, I know of specific information that you can't find on Google that I know exists that used to be available. But at the same time, I also know on YouTube some people have appealed with lawyers and actually succeeded with fighting YouTube. Anyway, you know, life is full of
Yeah.
injustice. What's that Bob Dylan song? Every time you turn around, there's someone else complaining or something. Do you know it?
No, I'm not much of a Bob Dylan fan actually. But that was a little bit before my. I was more in the Supertramp, Pink Floyd, but I was the same time actually, was it? But I was not so much into Bob Dylan.
No, that's okay. I guess I was always into hard luck stories somehow. And he sang one song was a hard luck story. A boxer got put in jail or something. Um, Willem, you've abandoned home. You've jumped ship. You've left your homeland, your mother country.
That's correct. Yeah. Well, in the sense that I sold the house, I gave it back to the bank without any losses, without any mortgage. Yeah, I left the place. It was a good moment to leave it. I mean, it's sad, of course, to leave your homeland. You know also about it, and most people who leave their country are not doing that because they like to do that. But it became really not livable, unbearable to be there on all levels. So yeah, I left there.
Now you're an expatriate. Are you gonna buy
Yeah,
another
sort of.
house?
I mean, I stay in France. I live in France here, and this is a safe place to be. It's in a rural area. It's out of cell tower reach, out of mobile reach. I don't know how they will implement 5G in France, but I think I'm completely alone here in this area, in this valley, and that's very noticeable. My body reacts very differently to be here in nature, out of this microwave environment. So in that sense, and see where this goes, because I have a mortgage as well here. So it's not mine, but it's good to use this as a basis and not anymore in a city. Anywhere actually, the cities are becoming more difficult to stay in
Yeah, it takes some
over time.
adjustment to go to the countryside, but I've tried and I like it. So I think you had a little disappointment. There was a mainstream TV station made a film, a documentary, very professionally made, and you were featured in it. And I think you were disappointed with the outcome or the reaction to it.
No, I was not disappointed at all because I was happy with the whole thing, with the whole documentary, how it was made up, the people who did an amazing job, and with myself being in it. They approached me this summer to be part of it again, and I mean I cannot refuse it. Of course, that would be ridiculous because my case is still one of the best documented cases in this aerotoxic syndrome area. But it was more interesting than disappointing. No, I'm very satisfied with it.
I'm sorry, I
have it out,
misread your situation. I'm sorry to have put across my misunderstanding. I think you were just disappointed with Holland and ready to leave rather than the film.
Yeah, it was very interesting to see the dynamics during and after the broadcasting of this documentary and how this was spinned in the mainstream news, but also the reaction of people. See it on a level of consciousness where people are and how they react to this kinds of information and news, and mostly how they do not react on this kind of information, which is sort of a microcosmic thing what you see around now happening in the world on a greater scale of the people not reacting anymore to certain information because they're probably filled up. But it was very interesting to see the mainstream news, how they spinned this blatantly and kept it out of the newspapers and the news, and how they did that was these things are becoming more blatant at the same time. So that's good, but it's good that it's out and the information is there for people to act and to react. I'm not disappointed.
I guess as you're talking about the decline of the mainstream media, that's the point. It's collapsing amongst its own games that it plays, but the corporate entities. I'll just mention that what the documentary was about was basically there's toxic air coming into the planes. I was surprised to learn from the documentary that the Dreamliner, which has been besotten with bad publicity, is the only airline that actually gets its air from an area not from the engines. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. It has a different air conditioning system, which makes use of compressors and takes the air from the outside, instead of making use of this bleed air where the air is tapped off the engine directly, unfiltered.
Right.
And that's causing this toxic blend entering the cabin. Yeah. But nowadays the air outside is toxic as well due to this geoengineering and transformed the atmosphere in a toxic plasma. So in that sense it's toxic as well, but you don't have this exposure to these nerve gas components like TCP, organophosphates. But that's only the Dreamliner, so most airplanes still have this bleed air system as an air conditioning system.
The other issue in The Hague is this court. What's the name of The Hague? For war crimes, and that was near your house.
Well,
and
that's correct.
The news. That's been in the news lately. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, this is these are the tribunals. Yugoslavia, Kosovo, Rwanda. All these tribunals are connected to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. And the International Criminal Court is nothing less than an imperialistic tool, and which serves, that's the role of Holland. It serves as a legal capital of the New World Order system, if you want to call it like that. And these institutions are part of this. These are NATO-funded, globalist-funded, Soros-funded institutions who appoint war criminals, and then you get all kinds of courts, legal systems.
They don't actually prosecute anyone from a NATO country, do they?
No, they are exempted from it, as well as one of the biggest perpetrators of violators of international law and human rights, Israel and the United States, are exempted from these courts. So it is not weird because they are the driving forces behind these institutions. Israel, I mean, The Hague most real estate is bought by Israelis. Holland serves as an Israeli Mossad epic center, Schiphol Airport as well with ICTS. So these countries who are the worst violators of human rights are exempted from these courts. So that by itself make these courts completely ridiculous. And all the people who work there, they should be aware of that. But they are completely under mind control. So they are not. They think they're doing the good thing. But you see what's happening now with people being persecuted, innocent, or taken out, or being killed in these prisons. Or it's very sad and very.
People die in prison,
and it's happening.
They say someone died of natural causes. We have no idea how they died, right?
Well, if you look into the different cases, then you see that people are being under very suspicious circumstances die when they're winning cases. For instance, the case of Milosevic, that's the biggest case, who died under very suspicious circumstances in the Srebrenica, the Hague prison, when he was winning his case. I mean, Milosevic was acquitted of all charges post-mortem. And then there is a defense witness, for instance, in the Mladic case, forensic expert who was there to be a witness on the Srebrenica affair, and he died in a hotel also the day before he was planning to do his stand in this court. So people dying there, and it seems that people are just ignoring what is happening now. It's a very unhealthy environment.
I never, there's so many, the whole Balkans war just leaves me with a lot of questions that I don't understand. Serbia, Yugoslavia was an ally against the Nazis, and yet Israel and NATO turned against Serbia. So there's a lot of things I don't understand, but I also don't understand why the Dutch seem to be so entwined with it. I think there was a Dutch representation for the UN in the Srebrenica area. Is that the case?
Yes, the Dutch army was based partly in Srebrenica to protect the enclave during this war.
So the Dutch feel that they're being blamed for something that isn't true. Is that correct?
Yes, well, that's true, yeah. And if you read the primary documents and all the reports of soldiers who were in the area, but also General Cousy, who was in charge of the Dutch troop, nobody makes any report of any massacre during the fall of Srebrenica. On the contrary, they all are reporting that the whole transition went completely correct without any massacres of these things. There was heavy fighting in the area, that's true, but this is again a complicated thing. But we see the same dynamics in this war as in other wars, because it's important to see this war as part of a bigger picture. The war was presented in a way which was completely false, with fake concentration camp stories, for instance, which appeared completely fake after this war. Well, where have we seen that before? So these forces who are behind this war are the same forces who are behind all these other wars, a lot of other wars, which would go back a long time. So
you're making me think of the comments I get. Some people say, "Oh, the Jews are behind all the wars all around the world." I'm not going to comment about whether I agree about it or not, but it just becomes unpalatable. You go, "Oh no, you can't leave such a comment." Sorry, please continue. But you reminded me of that.
Well, that's the thing which people are afraid of to just ask questions about because of their programming. We are being programmed with Srebrenica, with shame. Same with Second World War, where it's forbidden by law to ask certain questions. But if you see now what's happening in Israel, where Israel, Netanyahu, the genocide against the Palestinian people, the situation in Gaza and on the West Bank is worse than ever. Children are being kidnapped and tortured every day. But if you see how people respond now to what's happening with, for instance, Trump, who is acknowledging Jerusalem as the capital, everybody talks about Trump, but nobody talks about the driving forces behind this, which is next to him, is Netanyahu and his occulted clan, who is behind this biblical, messianic, Talmudic agenda and performing genocide. Nobody talks about that because we are afraid to speak out of it, because we are afraid of being labeled as an anti-Semite or whatever, while this elephant in the room is completely more blatantly visible everywhere where they go, but we still are afraid to mention it because we're afraid to be labeled as conspiracy, anti-Semite, all this
Fascist,
de-energized,
Nazi, God knows what. But while I agree with you, there's probably also a real fear of losing your job, your income, getting in trouble with the tax man or the bank. Yes.
Well, yeah, it's fear driven. That's why we should do this self work again to overcome and understand our fears, how we operate and express ourselves. I mean, like 10 years ago already, Congress members in the United States had to sign a pledge towards Israel if they would then enter Congress. So they had to give their support. If you see who's controlling the whole political arena, not only in the United States, but blatantly in the United States with, with double national people who have, how do you call it, double national passports are in Congress. And then we're talking about Russian manipulation of the United States politics, the political arena. It's blatantly who controls it, but we're afraid to mention that because then we're being labeled.
They've taken over everything. It's just extraordinary how there's very little left. Very little left, not under their control.
It's true. That's true.
So,
yeah. So well, it becomes. But the good thing is that it's becoming more and more visible. The parasite, the problems, the darkness is getting out. It's getting more and more visible and more blatantly in the open. And people seem to operate from a certain lobotomized state, mental schism, that they see it, but they don't act accordingly. They don't speak out about it because they're afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, people got to feed their children and eat and keep their mortgage and everything else. Listen, not that I'm saying they're doing the right thing. Let me bring it back to The Hague again. This Croatian officer took poison in the court and killed himself, right?
Yeah, correct.
Do you know anything about his story? I mean, I guess he was claiming he was innocent, or he was indignant, or what was the charge against him?
I mean, he was charged for war crimes, of course, but he was when he would be sentenced for 20 years, he actually would have been released when he was after it, because he served already 14 years. But it's more an indication of how horrific the circumstances and how injustice is being served there in this kangaroo court system, which you don't have any chance for being treated with justice. I mean, it's like what we just mentioned, that the countries of the worst human rights records violations are exempted from this court, who are the owners of this court. So it has nothing to do with justice. It has to do with legalizing NATO war crimes, Israeli war crimes, Saudi, US war crimes. These are all connected, of course. Britain, UK war crimes. We are the good guys, and we operate still on a collective level from a Stockholm syndrome, that we are the good guys. We are liberated by the good guys during the Second World War. No, we were not. These are all part of a bigger agenda. So when we keep looking at it at a compartmentalized view, but we don't see the real problem, which is inside blatantly for anyone who dares to see it, but because we are afraid of mentioning that and acknowledging that we were wrong, because we have this Stockholm syndrome. We still think that we are the good guys. This kind of thinking that the politicians are taking care of us. No, they don't. They're operating under severe mind control conditions.
Yeah. It's dreadful. It's dreadful. So let's just finish on what?
Well, it's the same with for instance, now you see with the Bitcoin madness.
Yeah.
What is an whole other thing? Maybe we should go there some other day.
No.
But
I was going to move the subject matter over. By all means, we can go into Bitcoin. I'll lead you in. Bitcoin is mushrooming. All the digital currencies are. I mean, I think if you buy Bitcoin, you're going to make money. The sad story is people are making fortunes. because they have money to start with. You know, the little guy can make $50, can make 5 meals.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the same. It's based on greed, actually. I mean, maybe it was started of good intention, possible, but it's now co-opted and used against us, like all these aspects which are being set out and then co-opted and then being weaponized and used against us. And the goal is to have a one world currency and a cashless one world currency. Well, Bitcoin serves as a perfect vehicle for it, but because we like children in a sort of candy factory, reacting to this and going to this out of this greed, so it makes us blind. But it's the same, because how would it serve ordinary people without any money, who is the far majority of the inhabitants of this planet?
Well, this is it. Most people are poor.
Yeah, true.
I don't know where it is going to lead to a cashless society. They say that India, and I was very slow to understand this, they withdrew, you know, the large notes last year. Are you familiar with that? In India, it was a rush scheme by the government. They withdrew all the big notes and made it almost a cashless society. And it was apparently devised by the New York banks as an experiment to see how they can do it in the West, really. We'll wake up one day.
Yeah, well, that's a good, that's a good thing. I mean, the solution, or it's crucial that we access higher levels of consciousness in order to reach our full potential and to protect ourselves against this. And for that, we need to look at these things not as a single compartmentalized problems, but they are all connected, and they use these different geographic areas, demographic areas, as all different kind of experimental areas for different approaches, you know, and these are connected, but we are all under attack here. But they do it in different ways.
Yes, it's a good point.
So
it's a global attack, but we don't know what's going on in other countries as they do their experiments. Look.
Yeah, but if you take a little distance from it and you look at the world itself, every continent is being viciously attacked in different ways. But if you take a look at it objectively, all these areas are being destroyed on all levels. It's really a war on humanity and the planet itself, if you look at it like that. But we operate still from this Stockholm syndrome kind of awareness. I even see people who say, well, when is it going to happen then? They see themselves separated from these areas. They think that if there's a war happening in Yemen, they use war there. Well, if you see in Asia, they use social engineering and wars in history. It's the same. You have in China and Russia, and Europe is now being destroyed by the immigrants, through the EU, through the breaking down of sovereignty of countries, which is all documented. It's a well-planned thing. This is all part of a very
well-planned.
sick.
It's well facilitated. It's encouraged. There's, you know, and you've got some countries. What is it? Hungary primarily, but Poland and one or two objecting. It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible war on the Muslims, because it's actually going to make more people antagonistic towards the Muslims who are being bombed and forced into migration status. No, it's a calamity.
Yes, it is. But it also but it forces us to see ourselves not separated from other areas in this world, and to come to the conclusion, if you look at it objectively, that we are all being attacked. And there's no difference between a child who's being molested in the Middle East or a child who's been killed in Africa, this continent in Africa, or that it's my child. There is no difference. If you look at it from a higher perspective of consciousness, the suffering is the same, and we should act the same.
And
then people say, well, you cannot save the whole world.
No.
Yeah, but and people say you cannot save the whole world. Well, we should at least try it, because we've been kept asleep for a long time. And this moral obligation comes with this higher level of consciousness.
I think
that we should try that.
you know, this is the problem, is that we can't really put our fingers on where the problem is. And I suspect the problem is with the victors of the Second World War, that they sit in think tanks and they dictate what policies are being implemented, including the mass migrations, the breakdown of sovereignty, and all the other things. And now it's Bitcoin, the internet. We take some of these things and we use them to our advantage. But they're policy decisions coming out of think tanks, and they won the war.
Yes.
They won the Second World War, and we're living in their shadow.
Yeah, well, but the First World War was also part of this agenda, and the Bolshevik Revolution was the same of it. But these wars are actually mind control rituals. I mean, if you take a look at the First World War, where millions of young guys just walked into automatic machine gun fire for nothing, by the millions, to the point that they had to lower the age of young guys who went in the army, and nobody went, hey, listen, what are we doing here? Actually, we're fighting here our brothers who 5 years before were like friends or didn't see them as the enemy. But with millions, they're walking into automatic machine gun, into certain death. Instead of saying, no, we don't do this. Who's going to send us here and we're going to attack them? What do we have to lose? So this goes back much further than only the Second World War, of course. These wars are just mind control rituals.
Yeah, I'm just not so familiar with history, but also the Balfour Declaration came in the era of the First World War. A lot stems back a long way, you're right. I've heard sporadic reports that in the First World War there were some kind of Christmas celebrations, and the two enemies would get together and drink and be merry, and then go back to the battlefields afterwards. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes. Well, before both of these wars, nobody wanted war. So we are being programmed through mind control, through these think tanks, Tavistock Institute. The history, of course, is crucial to understand who we are. But this is all the exterior reality, the reality outside of us. But because to understand that, it's important to understand who we are ourselves, how we operate. These things are connected with each other. If we don't know who we are, how we operate, where we come from, why we are here, then we don't know what's happening around us ourselves in the exterior as well. This is connected. This is a law of correspondence.
My personal theory is we don't know how we got here, and our ruling oligarchs do know. There's too many question marks on Darwinism and evolution, and we don't know our origins. You've raised this issue, but you raised another issue in my mind, talking about the wars, and we're programmed. I watch the American presidential elections every 4 years, and everybody is voting for peace and no more wars, and they do it every 4 years. It's a joke.
It is a joke. But as long as people are still focusing on that and watching television and getting their reality from that box, and then focusing on the visible part instead of focusing on the non-visible part, on the occultist, because that what's visible has already manifested. It's the plane of effects. No power for change lies there. We need to focus on the not visible parts, on the mental parts. There lies the real change, how we think and how we feel, and then get this in line in how we act and understanding and act from unity. But most people are still watching television, but I think more and more people waking up and losing interest for it, and that's also the reason why it's being shut down more and more. I mean, it's the censorship. It's ridiculous now. YouTube channels, what we talked about, being shut down daily.
Do you have your own ideas about where we came from? The subject was just raised. Have you ideas?
Well, I have some ideas where we came from, but I do definitely not think that we in this Darwinian theory, which is absurd. If you do research, it doesn't make any sense. And I think there's definitely some genetic modification happened in the past, which clearly yeah, the evidence is there if you do the research on that. But for that, you have to look on the internet. I mean, I don't know for sure where we came from. I know who I am. That's more and more, because I do this painstaking, very tiring self work. But peeling off these false belief systems is a very big part. And the more I do that, the more I understand also what's happening outside of us, and the more I lose the fear to mention it, because I operate also from fear. I didn't dare to speak out on certain subjects because then people will label you, or they will this political correctness, this emotional mind control, really, which keeps us sort of in a political correct, which is just sort of hate speech against us, to not speaking the truth about certain things or asking questions. But I don't know where we come from, but I do know that what we have been presented with is completely has nothing to do with reality.
Tabloid headlines.
Yes.
Missing link found.
Yes.
Is what you get every few years.
I don't want to be, it's always speaking about the so-called negative. People say, well, I don't want to speak about the negative. But I think if you want to solve the problem, a problem is a negative thing, if you want to call it like that, we have to focus on it in order to solve it. And as long as there is slavery, wherever it is, or as long as people are suffering or children are suffering, we have a problem. So we should not stop focusing on it. We should focus on it, because that's the only way to solve this. But this is a New Age commandment to ignore the negative, because what you resist persists. These kinds of concepts. But we have this obligation. It's not a moral option. It's a moral obligation.
Yeah, those that don't fight it are guilty. There are many expressions of that sort. Those that don't fight for justice are guilty of the injustice. Yeah,
and I mean the other New Age idea of karma, the law of karma, the real law of karma is actually, karma is not so much accreted by the things we do, by our actions. That's what the New Age commandment says, that karma is being accreted by our actions. No, most of our karma is being accreted by our inactions, by the things we do not do. So in other words, by the things we ignore. If we know that there is suffering going on wherever it is, and we choose to ignore it and not speaking out of it or act accordingly, not only this causes this self-inflicted suffering because our actions are not in line with our thoughts and emotions, but it also comes back to us on another level. What we see now happening in all these areas which are being destroyed, that's the real law of karma, of ignoring this, of not doing anything. When that's what New Age religion is. It neutralized our ability to act, our masculine aspect of action. You should not try to change reality, observe, keep smiling, send love, meditate on it, and no, we should act.
Yeah,
but that's very important. That
Californian phase, the New Age phase, flower power.
Yeah, and I was very deep in that as well. Although I always sense somewhere this is not right somewhere, but I was into it as well. Over meditating, doing spiritual practices, which were great, and it's not all bad, of course. But what I know about the New Age religion, because it's a religion, it neutralizes our masculine aspect of self-defense, right, and action. We need to act. If evil is running amok, we need to act. But and this law of cause and effect, or the law of karma is accreted by the things we do not do, mostly. Not by our actions also, but far more greater. You have to approach it through an apophatic approach, to look at the things we do not do, for all kinds of justification, that we cannot save the whole world. And the people said back then we didn't have the internet, so we didn't know that things were so bad in other countries. Well, now we know. So that brings us on a higher level of responsibility, which is connected to accessing this higher level of consciousness, and a higher level of moral obligation, and more opportunities as well. But it's difficult for a lot of people. But these same people becoming in a way sort of spiritual enemies, who still refuse to accept the reality as it is, namely that we are in a war. We are being attacked on all levels, humanity and the planet itself.
For all the bad publicity the Muslims get, I actually think they're resisting far more than the Westerners, who are just apathetic to everything. Yes. We should take a leaf out of their book.
Yes.
When the Arab Spring started, people would demonstrate in London and say, we are all Egyptians. We need that attitude.
Yes, but it's like this mental schism. If you see the past 10 years, what happened in the Middle East, where these countries have been absolutely destroyed with millions of innocent Muslims, not Western people, or no, Muslims people have suffered the far most the last decades, based on lies, based on this 9/11 false flag, Israeli false flag, Mossad, CIA operation, which caused this fraudulent war on terror, which caused millions of Muslim deaths. And now you ask people, what's the threat? Well, the Muslims are the threat. Well, I mean, this is absurd, really. It's really absurd, and this has consequences. Yeah, this has consequences. So I mean, this. We were just talking about this in the United States, where a lot of these officials and Congress members in politics have this double nationality, the two nationality. Imagine that in Holland we have Moroccan people in the Dutch government who have this still Moroccan nationality and Dutch. We are supporting Morocco with billions of money, military, and they are performing a genocide, ethnic cleansing operation in Morocco. Imagine that situation. I mean, it would be completely insane. And yet Israel is completely hijacked these political arenas, destroyed the whole country. There's now 21 trillion deficit. Well, who are these? Who controls the financial thing? Other thing, and these other political arenas, but we don't mention it. We're talking about Russian aggression because they manipulate the United States elections. We don't talk about Israeli involvement, who hijacked the whole thing.
They're running the whole world. They're running the whole world.
Yeah, they're running the world. Yeah, they're running the whole world. And this is this Talmudic Luciferian biblical agenda.
People see Dutch names and French names and they think, oh, nothing to do with Israel. They're so wrong. They're so wrong.
They're wrong. And it's an occupied country, blatantly occupied, Holland. You see the United States, I mean, they use this for this new world order. They have the United States as their military part, London as financial part, the Vatican as a spiritual part, which they hijacked, and Holland is the legal part of it. Because you see these institutions rising there, but they use Holland as the legal capital for this biblical, Talmudic, Luciferian New World Order insanity. But this is happening in our face.
All control mechanisms for Zionism.
Yes, yeah, true. And it's very destructive. And we are the Goyim, and we are all the Goyim. And all the ordinary people, also ordinary Jews, are being sacrificed for it. Look at the Second World War. They are all sacrificed for this.
They came up with this absurd thing that the Jews are an ethnicity, and that just is such an absurdity that it killed any sensible conversation, really. It was always a religion, really, as far as I know. And they turned it into a DNA issue, I mean, you're basically the mafia boss, the local Don. If you're running around with that label, you've got connections, and you're there to enforce. But it's an absurdity. You're not obliged to any belief system. It's supposedly in your blood.
It is absurd, but they have the same ideology. I think there's a sort of alliance between certain Christianity and in history and the Jesuits but because they have this same Luciferian satanic ideology of their idea of that they are the gods. I mean, a lot of people operate from the idea that they are the gods. And
if you're religious and you believe in God, you know that you did something wrong, you're going to get punished. There's no court case, and that's how they're behaving. The Zionists, They just punish, they just do what they want as if they're gods.
Yes, well, that's true, because there is something like natural law, objective natural law, same for everybody. But now it's based on moral relativism. It's the law changes per geographic region, and it's also again who owns this court system, who controls these court systems, who is made up. It's the same. The beast has this octopus has its claws in the court system, financial system. It is all in the hands of the same entity.
Well, they're pushing a lot of deviance on society. I don't think it would succeed otherwise.
No, it will not succeed, because it's in opposition with nature, and nature will always find ways.
It will
That's
eventually.
what we should remember as well. I mean, novelty is our core quality. Novelty is humanity's core quality. So we should approach it from completely different areas. But because of our fear, we are afraid to step out of this calcified framework of false belief systems and attachments.
Well,
but
that is true, and we have a lot that's familiar. But I think money and survival is also a big part of it all. You know, it's a fear of losing.
Yeah, but survival has nothing to do with money. But this is a concept that, of course, in this system, in this profound sick system, you need money to survive in a way. But it's made up like that. But on a core quality level, we don't need money to survive. We need food. We need shelter, these kinds of things, and because of that you need money here in this system. But the system is so sick that it's made up like that, and now we come with bitcoins to survive.
Yeah. No, they want us thinking about monetary issues and numbers, and it's sort of a part of the war on nature. You know, we all, there's still tribes that live quite happily without money. You know, they exist. And we could be similar.
Yes, and especially our children, they're completely disconnected from nature and talk about money. And if you leave them in a forest 2 nights without a mobile phone, they die. They become crazy nowadays. So they're disconnected from nature more than anyone, which is sad. I mean, especially our children are suffering from this madness, this social engineering madness. Which is but you know, from severe crisis most creativity comes actually. So if we're interfered with on a deep level, what's happening now, it forces us to access other levels of consciousness, other levels of creativity, which is our core quality, in order to survive.
You know,
and I think we'll do that.
20 years ago, we were not stuck with phones, mobile phones, and screens. And now that is just the whole world. Social media and screens and phones. It's extraordinary.
Yes, but it's true. The addictive, pathological use of these harmful weapons for our convenience, it's really staggering. But if you connect with people, that's what I also see. You also see another dynamic. If you connect with people, don't want war. They want harmony. They don't want. They want to be left alone.
Sure.
And if you connect with people, really connect with them wherever you are, you see really beautiful things in a way. Real connection with people. But for that, you have to really connect. And do that. And nowadays, if you're in a train or in a city, people are in their phones with headsets. If you write something down, they're like doing, "What are you doing? You're a weird guy. You should see a doctor." this strange behavior. But people are also connecting also with in suburbs in France. When you speak with Muslim people or whatever other people, if you connect on a human level, there is really a connection and a strong need for that connection. and there is love in it. There's really love in it, and that's universal, and that's everywhere. We are being manipulated to fight against each other, but I think more and more people see through this and see the suffering there and see the suffering here. We're in the same boat, and it's called the Titanic. So we can fight each other or change the captain and change course instead of changing the fighting over the furniture. But so there are also beautiful things happening, and you can experience it by connecting with nature and humans in real time, I think.
Yes, I think so.
That's what I see.
It takes some effort in this day and age. Everyone's in a hurry, but you've encouraged me to try a bit more.
Yeah, it's maybe the bad connections of the internet pushing us there as well. I cannot do much, so but I realize, hey, maybe it's a good thing. Just leave it. Just work outside, go outside, read a book. Reading books is crucial to understand who we are. Reading to read, but so there are always good things in it if we look differently at it. If we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. This kind of thing. So there are opportunities in everything. So if they shut down the internet, well, good thing, because then we are being forced to connect and talk real with people, and they have the same problem. So they cannot
I think
push
we'd all
it.
be happy in the end without it. It's taxing, and you can never get on top of it.
No. This is very challenging, but at the same time is a huge opportunity to liberate us from this virus inside ourselves and outside ourselves. So it's a time of amazing opportunities, despite the difficult aspects of it. Only real change can come from interference. From real interference can come real change. That's the only way. That's nature. So we have to accept that and get rid of our attachments and fears and understand it, and then we can go for real change and act. Get our thoughts, emotion, actions in line. Not this contradiction between how we think, because we know it's wrong. We feel that it's wrong, but we act differently because of justifications of we need money or blah, blah, blah. No, then there's this contradiction. If we get our actions in line with our thoughts and emotions, we don't have any enemies. We are in control. We are sovereign. Then.
I hope a lot of people listen to what you're saying.
Okay, well, let's speak again, Morris.
Yes, thanks a lot for today.